Welcome to Matchback Systems podcast. We're happy to be in the technology sector for this episode, taking a look at software solutions for the logistics industry. And we're also crossing the pond to get the perspective from Europe. I'm delighted to introduce our guest today, Marco Huijsman. Marco is the Managing Director of Cofano Software Solutions, which is based in the Netherlands. A warm welcome to you, Marco.
Thank you very much.
So let's start. Tell us about Cofano. What software solutions do you provide and what type of businesses are they helping?
Yeah, we are a software solution provider working, all our solutions are based on the internet technology. And we are specialized on several industries, especially on the intermodal part. We have order-to-cash solutions for intermodal service providers like barge operators and rail operators, as well as inland terminal, managing all the transport from the port to its final destination in the inland. And besides that, we have some platforms where we, for example, airports or port support in the custom process and optimizing the whole information and data flows. And another part we have is the more solution and the more advisory solutions. So if you want to travel by using intermodal services from one origin to a final destination, we have algorithms which give you the best result compared to lead time or cost.
That's great, Marco. So I know you have an impressive portfolio of customers, but before we get into that, let's start with how things are going in Europe in marine container shipping. So there's still a lot of supply chain disruption and uncertainty about the freight market in the US. And I'm interested to know if it's the same story in Europe. How's the market and logistics sector looking from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the same applies also in Europe. There is, of course, uncertainty, but we see the confidence returning. And if I look at the volumes, for example, in the port of Rotterdam or the port of Antwerp, of course, there was a big decrease of volumes starting from March, April. But if you see the half-year numbers, the figures, amazingly, for example, the port of Antwerp just published its results, and the total throughput in tons was a decrease of 5%. But containers were quite stable, and there was a small increase compared to the numbers of 2019 in the same half year. So that's a little promising, I think. And if I look at our own customers, I see that everybody is getting back to the throughput and the numbers they handled at the beginning of this year. So everybody had a decrease in average of 15 to 25%. But I think everything is stabilizing at this time. So
that's interesting and encouraging as well.
Yeah,
yeah. Now you mentioned that Cofano solutions are applied to barge operations, and I'm interested to know how successful is the barge network in Europe, and also are we missing any opportunities in the US, in your opinion?
To start with the first, I think the barging is very successful in Europe, and we maybe are also lucky with, especially the port of Rotterdam and the port of Antwerp, with all the rivers which connect to the hinterland, to Germany, to Switzerland, to France. So it's a very important mode of transport. For example, the container throughput in the port of Rotterdam is about 15 million TEUs a year, and 45% of this volume to the hinterland is handled by barges. So it's a significant part of the modal splits which is handled by barges.
Yeah.
And if this were not if the river network was not in place, then this should be handled by road. And I think the whole port of Rotterdam and Antwerp, including all the highways to Germany or France or Belgium, would be highly congested. So there is no world without the river barging, I think.
Right, and it's a sustainable solution as well.
Yeah, and that's another big advantage. It's a sustainable mode of transport. If you look to the carbon footprint, for example, and what you see is that a lot of mid-sized also nowadays, but there's also the bigger companies are getting more awareness about their footprint. So there is also a tendency to use more river barge in the supply chain.
Right.
And also what you see now in Europe is also the barging industry is also electrifying, and they use 20 feet containers as a battery, and they just switch batteries at an inland terminal. And also the inland terminals are within 20 or 50 miles in the hinterland of the port. So it is not only long distance for barging, it's also very cost attractive, and from the carbon footprint, it's also very attractive on the short distance.
Cool. And do you think that there are any opportunities in the US?
Yeah, I think so. And I was lucky to visit Memphis 3 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And I also had the opportunity to just drop by still a small barge terminal, but I think there should be a lot of potential on the Mississippi, for example. But I also saw that there are some initiatives in the port of Norfolk connecting to Richmond. I think that are first steps. Of course, you need the river network and the infrastructure for it, but I think it's the only solution to get also out of the congestions in the port. And
right.
you can use river barge also on a short distance.
Interesting. So come back again, Marco.
Also the US Transportation Department of the Department of Transportation. There was some funding assigned to some projects, about 5 or 6 million. It was in the Journal of Commerce in April. So, yeah, I think
it's some promise.
Yeah, I think it needs awareness from the forwarders and also the shippers, because it's not easy to switch to the river to river barging, for example, but
right.
It's very sustainable and it's very reliable. So
okay. And then based on your experience with optimizing the processes or workflow for barge operations, can you draw any parallels or lessons that could apply to container vessels in a similar way?
Yeah, you can. What I'm seeing in the container industry now is that the call sizes from the deep sea vessels are getting bigger and bigger, and sometimes they also skip some ports in the route. That is also a part where I see also the river barge is now also getting more of interest to connect smaller barge services to the main ports, where some calls are skipped, and they to get the same service level to some overseas destinations, there can be a feedering executed by barges in the ports or in between ports.
Okay. And then you also partner with ports and terminals. I think that includes the Port of Rotterdam, which of course is huge. So what are your thoughts on port operations and interoperability, where there are several container terminals handling, deep sea, short sea and inland shipping? It's pretty complicated. What are the challenges there and what are the solutions?
Yeah, because I think barges and deep sea vessels are competing on the key site availability and key cranes of handling, because containers going in and out from the water connection. But on the other hand, a barge is able to move a lot of containers at once. And we are supporting and providing also solutions to manage these kind of processes. And that's also what we are doing in the port of Rotterdam, where we have a centralized platform, for example, which is optimizing all the barge calls and taking into account also the vessel calls. So that the rotation of the barge and the deep sea vessels are optimized, and the turnaround, and it has no impact on the turnaround of the vessels. So they are handled as fast as possible.
Okay. And let's talk about technology. So first of all, what's your take on logistics technology in Europe, and is the approach any different to that in the US?
Yeah, we are different compared to other classic IT companies, but I think that's the general tendency, because I think the software nowadays should be as a service. So you pay, for example, per TU or a fixed monthly fee, and you will get everything for that. Our services only require an internet browser. So I think that is new technology, or state-of-the-art technology, because it's not that new anymore. But it also requires that you are open for all the improvements, so your software will not become old. And that's why we also say, okay, all the new features or all new technology which is coming is included in your fixed monthly fee or in the TU price, without any additional costs in this case. So. And I think that's changing. I'm not sure if this is already happening in the US. What you see is that there are startups all looking for improvement, but still the marine industry is quite conservative, and it's really hard to get a change. So you need front runners and early adapters,
Right.
and you need to be there for 2 or 3, 4 years, and then the change can be made. But it's something for the long run, getting new technology integrated into supply chains, from my perspective.
Right.
But it's happening.
Yes. And there's always, there's a push for modernization, for greater adoption of technology to make marine shipping processes more efficient. I wonder, do you think the disruption caused by the pandemic has underscored the need or even accelerated digitizing processes and information flow, for example?
Yes and no. From one side, I think yes, because we get more awareness of the carbon footprint and that we need to change, and IT and technology can also be very important and part of that step. On the other hand, I see that everybody is freezing all the projects, especially the larger companies. So there is a hold. And I hope that these big companies still have the power to use this pandemic to just also start investing in new technology.
Right. And where's the biggest black holes in your opinion? What's the processes that need to be addressed first?
One of the most important is data sharing. And be more open. Use internet technology. Get off of the old mainframes. We should also start using APIs instead of the old ADFACT protocols, because then this gives much more opportunity. A better opportunity to exchange more data and even faster and so on. But this is, if I see it, especially at the bigger companies, it's a lot of still based on ADFACT data exchange.
Right.
But I think if you share more, you will earn more.
Yes. There's also an ongoing effort to standardize data and processes in the marine industry. And I wonder, how important you think that is, whether progress has been made, and how does it compare to other modes of transport, like air freight, for example?
I thought that air freight was also much more developed compared to marine. But luckily, we also had the opportunity to add the airline industry to our portfolio. And the airport of Amsterdam, for example, is one of our customers.
Right.
And I thought they were far ahead, but now they are, because they use our applications.
Of course.
We contribute to an improvement on paperless good exchange between the warehouses for freight forwarders and the airport. And that is legislation in the European Union, and that was not utilized. But that gives a huge improvement and a reduction of cost within the supply chain. And I think that's data sharing in a new way, using new technology, a platform of ours. And that's something which can also be very interesting also for the marine industry. So it depends on the project, the people which initiate, but yeah, if you will not try, you will not achieve new things. So
yeah,
I think that's also one of our messages. You start trying and don't be afraid.
Good advice, Marco. So now, since you're in Europe, I have to ask you about Brexit. And I mean, it's fallen down the agenda because of the pandemic, but it's fast approaching. I mean, the UK is due to leave the EU at the end of this year, and there's some uncertainty about how it will affect trade and the potential impact on processes and data exchange and documentation. So what's your take, Marco? What's the feeling in
I think you're right. It will affect trade.
Mm-hmm.
And what we are already seeing happening now. And as long as there are no agreements, this will definitely have an impact and an increase on costs, transportation costs, but also on the cost of the final products in the end. And especially, all the import duties, that's still very uncertain, but that will be applicable now. So yes, I think the supply chains and logistic industry is not happy with it, but it's a fact of life now. So
right.
And, so far, everything is postponed now. So it's still very uncertain what will happen at the end. But
okay,
within 5 years, I think there will be, when we look at the cargo, the free movement of cargo in one way or another, but without any customs regulations. But
it's going to be a slog.
Yeah. The UK will be the same as the US from European perspective, I think.
Yeah.
You need to pay duties. And we were not used to it when moving goods to the UK or the other way around.
No. And of course, coming at the same time as the pandemic, it's, it's horrible.
Yeah, and also for the complete economic situation of the EU and also especially for the UK. So.
Yes. Okay, so to finish up, Marco, I would like to circle back to Cofano. And I noticed on the recruitment page of your website that the first step for people interested in joining your team is to meet up for a cup of coffee at a cafe of their choice. And it struck me as a novel approach and an interesting insight on your company culture. So how would you describe your Cofano's company culture?
Yeah, we are a very young company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also within the culture. So it's our organization is very flat. And it's we do not have, for example, any starting times at the office. So if you want to start at 7 a.m., you're welcome at 7 a.m. But all our people are programmers, most of them. So some programmers prefer to start at 11 or at midday. So okay, you're welcome at midday. We are focusing on the output and not on your presence.
Yes.
So it's very informal at our office, and of course, when it needs to be formal, we are formal. But
I mean, I noticed, that you had a lovely photo of your team, and they look like a vibrant, happy group. So that's
that's only part of it. It's only a small group. I think but our biggest challenge nowadays also is not really the business, but where do we get the programmers? Where do we get the people?
Yes, I was wondering that, you know, is it difficult to attract people, especially IT folk, to a career in logistics?
Yeah, because we are looking for programmers, especially, and with some, we are looking for programmers with who like logistics. So that's really hard to find.
Yes.
And so, but to accommodate our growth, we need new developers. So that's also why we moved close to the universities. And also some of our colleagues are teaching at the university and getting young students interested in the maritime industry, in container logistics, in the intermodal, by explaining technology and also to present some nice use cases or challenges.
Right, that's a good move. I mean, perhaps one silver lining from the pandemic is that people now recognise the importance of supply chains and more aware of the logistics sector.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the positive things about the corona.
Well, let's just mention that any of our listeners who are interested in Cofano solutions or new recruits, that the website is www.cofano.nl.
That's true.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, well, it's been great talking with you, Marco. Thanks very much for sharing your experience and insights and giving us the perspective from Europe.
Thank you.
Great.